It is a great honor to be in Tokyo, the first stop on my first visit to Asia as President of the United States. And it is good to be, thank you. It is good to be among so many of you, Japanese, and I see a few Americans here, who work every day to strengthen the bonds between our two countries, including my longtime friend and our new ambassador to Japan, John Roos. It is wonderful to be back in Japan. Some of you may be aware that when I was a young boy, my mother brought me to Kamakura, where I looked up at that centuries-old symbol of peace and tranquility, the great bronze Amida Buddha. And as a child, I was more focused on the matcha ice cream. And I want to thank Prime Minister Hatoyama for sharing some of those memories with more ice cream last night at dinner. Thank you very much. But I have never forgotten the warmth and the hospitality that the Japanese people showed a young American far from home. And I feel that same spirit on this visit. In the gracious welcome of Prime Minister Hatoyama, in the extraordinary honor of the meeting with their Imperial Majesties, the Emperor and Empress, on the 20th anniversary of his ascension to the chrysanthemum throne, in the hospitality shown by the Japanese people, and of course I could not come here without sending my greetings and gratitude to the citizens of Obama, Japan. Now, I am beginning my journey here for a simple reason. Since taking office, I have worked to renew American leadership and pursue a new era of engagement with the world based on mutual interests and mutual respect. And our efforts in the Asia-Pacific will be rooted in no small measure through an enduring and revitalized alliance between the United States and Japan. From my very first days in office, we have worked to strengthen the ties that bind our nations. The first foreign leader that I welcomed to the White House was the Prime Minister of Japan. And for the first time in nearly 50 years, the first foreign trip by an American Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton, was to Asia, starting in Japan. In 2 months, our alliance will mark its 50th anniversary, a day when President Dwight Eisenhower stood next to Japan's Prime Minister and said that our two nations were creating an indestructible partnership based on equality and mutual understanding. In the half-century since, that alliance has endured as a foundation for our security and prosperity. It has helped us become the world's two largest economies, with Japan emerging as America's second largest trading partner outside of North America. It has evolved as Japan has played a larger role on the world stage and made important contributions to stability around the world, from reconstruction in Iraq to combating piracy off the Horn of Africa to assistance for the people of Afghanistan and Pakistan, most recently through its remarkable leadership in providing additional commitments to international development efforts there. Above all, our alliance has endured because it reflects our common values, a belief in the democratic right of free people to choose their own leaders and realize their own dreams, a belief that made possible the election of both Prime Minister Hatoyama and myself on the promise of change. And together we are committed to providing a new generation of leadership for our people and our alliance. And that is why, at this critical moment in history, the two of us have not only reaffirmed our alliance, we've agreed to deepen it. We've agreed to move expeditiously through a joint working group to implement the agreement that our two governments reached on restructuring U.S. forces in Okinawa. And as our alliance evolves and adapts for the future, we will always strive to uphold the spirit that President Eisenhower described long ago, a partnership of equality and mutual respect. But while our commitment to this region begins in Japan, it doesn't end there. The United States of America may have started as a series of ports and cities along the Atlantic Ocean, but for generations we have also been a nation of the Pacific. Asia and the United States are not separated by this great ocean. We are bound by it. We are bound by our past, by the Asian immigrants who helped build America, and the generations of Americans in uniform who served and sacrificed to keep this region secure and free. We are bound by our shared prosperity, by the trade and commerce upon which millions of jobs and families depend. And we are bound by our people, by the Asian Americans who enrich every segment of American life, and all the people whose lives, like our country's, are interwoven. My own life is a part of that story. I am an American president who was born in Hawaii and lived in Indonesia as a boy. My sister Maya was born in Jakarta and later married a Chinese Canadian. My mother spent nearly a decade working in the villages of Southeast Asia, helping women buy a sewing machine or an education that might give them a foothold in the world economy. So the Pacific Rim has helped shape my view of the world. And since that time, perhaps no region has changed as swiftly or dramatically. Controlled economies have given way to open markets. Dictatorships have become democracies. Living standards have risen while poverty has plummeted. And through all these changes, the fortunes of America and the Asia Pacific have become more closely linked than ever before. So I want everyone to know, and I want everybody in America to know, that we have a stake in the future of this region, because what happens here has a direct effect on our lives at home. This is where we engage in much of our commerce and buy many of our goods. And this is where we can export more of our own products and create jobs back home in the process. This is a place where the risk of a nuclear arms race threatens the security of the wider world, and where extremists who defile a great religion plan attacks on both our continents. And there can be no solution to our energy security and our climate challenge without the rising powers and developing nations of the Asia Pacific. To meet these common challenges, the United States looks to strengthen old alliances and build new partnerships with the nations of this region. To do this, we look to America's treaty alliances with Japan, South Korea, Australia, Thailand, and the Philippines. Alliances that are not historical documents from a bygone era, but abiding commitments to each other that are fundamental to our shared security. Now, these alliances continue to provide the bedrock of security and stability that has allowed the nations and peoples of this region to pursue opportunity and prosperity that was unimaginable at the time of my first childhood visit to Japan. And even as American troops are engaged in 2 wars around the world, our commitment to Japan's security and to Asia's security is unshakable. And it can be seen in our deployments throughout the region, above all through our young men and women in uniform, of whom I am so proud. Now, we look to emerging nations that are poised as well to play a larger role, both in the Asia-Pacific region and the wider world. Places like Indonesia and Malaysia that have adopted democracy, developed their economies, and tapped the great potential of their own people.